Hi, my name is Vil Vauder, and I want to welcome you to this series of Why I Am Not. And the presentation today will be Why I Am Not a Buddhist. Now, this series will have 10 true and false questions, which will give us an overview of Buddhism, and then there will be a series of fill in the blank that will help us see the distinction between Christianity and Buddhism. Let's begin and look at question 1, our first true and false question. Buddhism started after Christianity and before Islam, which would essentially be, let's say, 30 CE up to 650 CE. Is that true or false? The answer to that is false. Actually, Buddhism is believed to have started around 550 BC or 550 BCE, about 100 years before Socrates. Now, a lot of you say, who cares about Socrates and being before him? Basically, it's looking to the time of Socrates that the foundation of Western intellectualism, Western philosophy, really became grounded and started. And so Socrates is looked at for that, and the interesting feature is when Socrates started teaching what we would call Western philosophical teaching, Buddha had already had his teaching out for 100 years. Let's look at the next question, the next true and false. The initial prophet of Buddhism was Siddhartha Gautama. Is that true or false? That's true. Siddhartha was born a prince, and before he was born, there was a prophecy that he would become one of two things, a great king or a holy man. His father was so concerned about this that he kept his son within palace walls and made sure everyone was young, no one was sick, no one ever died around him. He kept him with that environment. And after Siddhartha was married and had a child, he escaped the palace walls one night and he encountered 4 great sights. Now, this might have been 4 nights. I can't remember if it was one night or 4 nights, but there were 4 sights. First, he saw an old man. What is this? Then he saw a sick person. Then he went on and saw someone who had died, totally puzzled by this. And then he saw a holy man. And as he asked questions, people explained to him what these things meant. And as he thought about these, he soon forsook the palace, his wife and his child, and went out into the world to find truth. And from his age of 29 to 35, he lived an ascetic life. Ascetic means he brought on self-punishment into his life because he wanted to teach himself that his body and the material world were not the real things of life, but the spiritual world behind them. And during a time of extreme fasting, sitting under a Bodhi tree, he suddenly realized what the truth was. And essentially, from the age of 35 to 80, he taught disciples. And his first disciples were 5 in number. You can see them off to his side, the left on our screen. You see the emaciation of his rib cage. He's sitting under this tree called the Bodhi tree, the Bodhi. Now to the right you see this blue character, which is very common in Far East art, particularly Indian art. And whenever a character is blue like that, that's an avatar, and we'll be looking at avatars later. Let's go to our next question. There are 3 major divisions in Buddhism. Is that true or false? Well, it's true and false. It depends how people look at it, how they divide it, what they think is major and not major. But there are 3, well, there's 2, 3, or 4 really major divisions, certainly 3 of them. First of all, there's the Theravada division of Buddhism, the Mahayana, and then up here I'll put up here the Vajrayana. The Theravada is sometimes called Catholic Buddhism because it's more restricted in its beliefs. Its teaching is more controlled. The appeal to authority and the authority of holy writings is more strict. The Mahayana is often referred to, in the Western world of course, as Protestant Buddhism. Much more broad in what it sees as authority in teaching. Vajrayana is just another branch altogether. The details of that, just go online and look at it. Quite often when we think of Buddhism, the world leader that crosses our mind is this gentleman right here, the Dalai Lama of his sect of Buddhism. The Dalai Lama is connected with Tibetan Buddhism, and the leading sect of Tibetan Buddhism is ruled by the Dalai Lama. Let's go to question number 4. Metaphysical speculation is more important than direct experience. You may not use the term metaphysical speculation, but what it is looking at the world and looking and saying, what is real? I can see the physical, but what's beyond the physical? Is that all it is, just the stuff we see out there? And that's what the metaphysical means, beyond the physical. Speculation, thinking about it. Often when we see pictures of Buddhists, we'll see them praying like in this picture right here. Their hands together, eyes closed, sometimes they have their heads bowed. And so the question is this more important than the encounters with the physical world? The answer to that is false. Without question, meditation is a key element of Buddhism. But right practice takes priority over meditation. And the reason for that, if your practice is not right, then you will, by your practice, convince yourself that the material is more real, and you can meditate all day long and you won't overcome it. It's not possible. Now, we need to understand that meditation for a Buddhist is not prayer. They're not praying to anybody or anything. That is not what is happening. Meditation is a time in which Buddhists are practicing a mental discipline to extinguish the delusion that the physical world is the real world. They're trying to understand through thinking and through just meditation that the spiritual world is the real world. It's not what they can see and touch and taste. That's not it. So meditation absolutely is essential, but not before right practice. Let's look at question number 5. Anyone can become a Buddha. And depending on your understanding of Buddhism, this question may throw you all together because, well, there's one Buddha. No, anyone can become a Buddha. Because Buddha is not a name. To give an example, you have heard of chess, you may not know much about it, but the highest accomplishment for a chess player is Grandmaster. When a person is a Grandmaster, they've reached the highest level that's achievable within chess. Well, in the same way that chess master is not a name but a level of achievement, the same is true with Buddha. Buddha means awakened or enlightened. A Buddha is one who finally gets it, who really sees the difference between the physical and the metaphysical. I've used the word spiritual, but sometimes when we say the word spiritual, we think of personalities, and I think it's really better for us to think in terms of something that's beyond the physical, the metaphysical. Theravada, Buddha, is the highest state achievable. In the Mahayana, Bodhi is the highest state. Bodhi is that tree, and so it also has become a title. There are 3, facets of life that will drag a person down and keep them from being enlightened. Those are greed, hatred, and delusion. And greed basically is desire. We limit greed to money, but greed is any desire of where we hunger and we thirst for something we want, whether it be a position, whether it be a new car, a new dress, a new TV, money, position, those desires. Then hatred, of course, is the attitude and actions that we direct towards other people. Delusion is the delusion that the physical world is the real world and not the metaphysical world. With the Theravada, when a person has reached the state of Buddha, all 3 of these have been overcome. The Buddha is able to understand these and get beyond them. In the Mahayana, that is not so. When a participant of that, disciple of that, becomes a Buddha, he has solved greed and hatred. He's beyond those. But he's still not quite beyond delusion yet. When he reaches the state of Bodhi, then greed, hatred, and delusion are taken care of. Number 6. The Pali Tipikada is slightly smaller than the Bible. The Pali Tipikada is the authoritative scripture basically for all Buddhist branches. Some will take this, some will take all, some will take it.